The engine's guttural roar surrendered to a haunting silence as I turned the key on that fateful day. The soft, persistent ticking of cooling metal blending with the steady, labored breathing of Kilo beside me. His warm presence a fragile anchor in the cab's oppressive stillness that mirrored the weight of my desperate escape. 3 grueling hours of highway driving stretched behind us like a taut thread. A relentless flight from the suffocating grip of city life that had settled into my shoulders like a leaden shroud since I'd fled my apartment at dawn. The tension coiling tighter with each mile, my knuckles whitening against the steering wheel as the urban sprawl receded into memory. Stepping out onto the trailhead's rutted dirt, the crisp mountain air bit into my lungs with a sharp, invigorating sting. A stark contrast to the stale confinement I'd left behind, as I stretched, working the deep, aching kinks from my spine with a groan, my boots sinking into the earth with a satisfying, grounding crunch that echoed faintly in the deserted expanse. The parking area lay abandoned, a barren stretch of ruddy soil framed by a weathered wooden sign pointing toward the backcountry trails, its faded letters peeling under the relentless sun. A silent promise of solitude that felt almost sacred perfect, for the last thing I desired was the raucous intrusion of weekend warriors, their loud, careless voices and clattering, overpriced gear a jarring discord against the fragile peace I craved. Their presence an unwelcome echo of the chaos I sought to escape. Kilo leapt from the passenger seat with a graceful, almost joyous bound, his thick, bushy coat catching the afternoon breeze like a tattered banner unfurling in the wind. His tail wagging with unrestrained exuberance as he sniffed the lingering, earthy scents of other dogs etched into the truck's wheels. His golden eyes alight with a primal excitement that mirrored the anticipation swelling in my chest, a quiet hope that this journey might restore what the years had stripped away. This was no mere camping trip. It was a pilgrimage back to the wild, a desperate reclamation of the primal connections severed by a decade of military service and urban exile, where the ceaseless hum of civilization had dulled my senses, eroded my spirit, and left me a shadow of the man I once was. With the meticulous precision of a soldier honed by 10 years of survival in hostile terrains, I checked my gear. Rifle slung across my back, its cold, familiar weight a comforting sentinel against the unknown. Pistol holstered at my hip, a quiet vow of readiness etched into its polished steel. Bow case strapped to my pack, perhaps an overabundance for this venture, but the lessons of preparedness burned deep from nights where hesitation meant death, their memory a constant companion. The trail emerged as a narrow, serpentine path of dirt, swallowed by dense pine that loomed like ancient sentinels, their branches weaving a dark tapestry, and I memorized the map's contours with a soldier's focus. 3 hours through rugged, unyielding terrain to the backcountry camping area. A sanctuary distant enough to mute the distant growl of traffic, a place where the world's noise might finally fade. "Come on, boy," I called, my voice cutting through the stillness with a roughness born of disuse, and Kilo trotted to my side, his steady gait a loyal companion as we stepped into the forest's shadowed embrace. The air thick with the rich, resinous scent of pine and the damp musk of earth, a world apart from the concrete cages and fluorescent hum I'd left behind, a realm where every rustle and whisper promised both solace and peril. The ascent began with a steady, relentless climb, the trail winding through thick stands of pine and aspen, their gnarled branches intertwining overhead to form a verdant cathedral that filtered the sunlight into a dappled, shifting mosaic. The sky reduced to fleeting, tantalizing glimpses of blue peeking through the dense canopy. My boots found purchase on the rocky path, each step a deliberate, measured rhythm that steadied my breathing despite the incline. The physical exertion a welcome release that rekindled a sense of purpose long buried beneath the monotony of desk work, the suffocating crush of city crowds, and the lingering ghosts of battlefield decisions. Kilo ranged ahead, his movements a blur of raw energy as he chased the occasional squirrel, his sharp barks echoing briefly through the trees before he circled back, his golden eyes locking with mine in a silent check to ensure I trailed behind, his joy a stark, vibrant contrast to the tension that had knotted my muscles for weeks. We paused twice for water, the cool liquid a fleeting relief as I watched Kilo lap eagerly from his portable bowl, his tongue a pink flash against the green, while my gaze roamed the surroundings with a soldier's scrutiny. Deer tracks pressed deep into the mud, their edges crisp and fresh, claw marks scarring tree bark like silent warnings from unseen predators. bird calls threading through the branches in a symphony of life that spoke of a world untouched by human strife. This was the wilderness I'd yearned for during years of deployment, where the air carried the clean, sharp tang of pine rather than the acrid bite of gunpowder, and the only threats were the natural ones I'd learned to navigate with a hunter's instinct, a return to a time when survival depended on skill rather than strategy. By late afternoon, the clearing I'd marked on the map emerged, a natural hollow 50 yards from a creek that bubbled over smooth, moss-slick stones, its waters a shimmering lifeline in this untamed expanse, the sound a soothing counterpoint to the silence that had begun to press against my ears. The space was ideal. Ample for my tent, a fire ring, and the creek's endless supply, and I dropped my pack with a heavy sigh, the weight slipping from my shoulders as I set to work with the disciplined efficiency of a soldier, my hands moving with a rhythm born of habit. Kilo explored the perimeter, his nose grazing the earth with meticulous care, pausing to investigate intriguing scents, faint traces of musk, the sharp tang of pine sap, his tail a metronome of curiosity as he marked our new territory. I erected the tent with practiced hands, its fabric snapping taut against the breeze, the poles clicking into place with a satisfying precision, while a fire ring took shape with stones hauled from the creek bed, their cool, damp weight grounding me in the moment. I gathered dead wood, stacking it with care for the evening's warmth, the brittle branches crackling faintly under my touch, and prepared dinner. A modest affair of freeze-dried rations heated over my portable stove, the faint sizzle a comforting domestic note amid the wild. I ate slowly, savoring the quiet sounds that enveloped us. The creek's gentle murmur over stones, the wind's soft rustle through pine needles, the occasional bird call fading into dusk, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long, spectral shadows that danced with the fire's glow. This was the peace I'd chased, a haven from deadlines and expectations, a moment where only Kilo and I existed, the world reduced to the crackle of flames and the rhythm of our synchronized breaths, a fragile sanctuary in a land that felt increasingly alive with unseen eyes. Yet, as we finished our meal and I cleaned my gear with methodical care, wiping grease from the stove with a cloth, a subtle, insidious shift permeated the air, an intangible change that prickled my skin like the first cold breath of a storm rolling down from the peaks. The bird calls ceased abruptly, their absence a sudden, jarring void that swallowed the wind's gentle rustle, leaving an eerie stillness that pressed against my ears with a weight I could almost feel, a silence so profound it seemed to hum with intent. Kilo's head lifted, his gaze locking onto the tree line on the clearing's far side. His ears perked and twitching, his body tense with a rigidity that mirrored the unease coiling in my gut like a tightening spring. Instinct, forged in the crucible of combat where every shadow held a threat, drove me to scan the forest edge with a soldier's precision, my eyes tracing a practiced pattern, left to right, seeking movement where stillness should reign, shapes that clashed with the natural lines of trees and bushes, any hint of an intruder in this isolated domain where I'd sought refuge. Nothing, only the dark interstices between trunks and the expected, shifting shadows of a dense forest met my scrutiny, their familiarity a thin veneer over the growing sense of being watched. I shook my head, attributing it to the hypervigilance of a mind scarred by years of patrols, returning to my task with a forced calm, though the sensation lingered like a whisper at the edge of hearing, a faint echo that refused to fade. As darkness enveloped the campsite, the fire's warmth radiated against my skin, and the stars' piercing brilliance pierced the canopy, offering a fleeting solace that I clung to as I lingered, feeding the flames with deliberate care, musing on extending our stay if the weather held, the thought a small rebellion against the unease that gnawed at me. Sleep claimed me easily within my sleeping bag, the cool mountain air a gentle lullaby that wrapped around me like a shroud, while Kilo settled just outside the tent's entrance, his bulk a guardian silhouette against the dying firelight, his position a habit from our days when vigilance meant the difference between life and death, his steady breathing a faint reassurance in the night. Around 2 a.m., a sound, or perhaps the ghost of instinct sharpened by a decade of survival, wrenched me from sleep, my body rigid as I lay listening to the darkness beyond the tent's thin, fabric walls, the silence now a canvas for the unfamiliar. Soft rustling emanated from the clearing's edge, a deliberate, measured cadence that differed from the haphazard shuffle of deer or elk, each movement calculated with a precision that suggested something strove to muffle its presence yet faltered. The sound, a faint scrape of leaves and a whisper of displaced earth. Kilo remained motionless, his form visible in the fire's fading glow. No raised head, no alert posture. A stark departure from his usual responsiveness to nocturnal disturbances that sent a chill racing down my spine. His stillness a betrayal of the instincts I'd come to rely on. Slipping my flashlight from its holster with a soldier's stealth, I unzipped the tent with a whisper of fabric, the beam slicing through the night like a blade as I swept it across the tree line with a slow, methodical arc. Nothing but the familiar silhouette of pines standing sentinel, their branches swaying faintly, and the natural play of shadows that danced with the fire's dying embers. "Just animals, boy," I whispered, my voice a shaky attempt at reassurance, crawling back into my bag with a heaviness that belied my words, though the incident lodged in my mind like a splinter, a persistent irritation that refused to be ignored, its implications lingering as I drifted back into an uneasy slumber. Dawn broke with a clarity that dispelled the night's unease, the first golden rays filtering through the trees as I brewed coffee over the stove, the steam curling into the morning air like a spectral veil, and my eyes caught an anomaly near the creek. Prints etched into the soft, damp mud, roughly 7 inches long and 3.5 wide. Their shape a grotesque parody of human feet, narrowed at the heel with claw-like gouges at the toes that glinted wetly in the light. Kneeling beside them, I measured with my knife, the blade's edge tracing the contours with a soldier's precision. The depth suggesting a light frame, perhaps 60 or 70 pounds, the spacing irregular and shorter than a human stride, with an odd, stuttering rhythm that hinted at something unnatural, a gait that defied the logic of any known creature. The trail looped our campsite in a silent, predatory circuit, a path that raised the hairs on my neck with its implication of a watcher, and Kilo's disinterested sniff, devoid of his usual hunting zeal, deepened my unease, his lack of reaction a puzzle that gnawed at the edges of my confidence. I captured the prints with my phone, the camera's click a solitary sound in the morning quiet, though I knew not who to show them to. David might laugh, attributing them to bear tracks, but I'd seen enough wildlife to recognize this as something other, and pressed on with the day, fishing yielding 3 trout, their silvery scales glinting like armor in the sun, while exploration mapped the creek's bends with a meticulous care, yet the tracks lingered in my thoughts. A riddle I couldn't unravel, their presence a shadow that darkened the day's promise. The second night unfurled with a silence that thickened around 9 p.m., the forest's ambient chorus reduced to the crackle of my fire and the creek's steady, hypnotic flow, a stillness that felt oppressive, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. Then came whispers, low and rhythmic, emanating from multiple directions like a chorus of unseen voices, their cadence almost linguistic yet incomprehensible, a tapestry of sound that ceased the moment my flashlight pierced the darkness with its harsh, white light. Movement followed, a rustling retreat that suggested calculation, the faint scrape of branches and the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, and I shouted a warning, my voice echoing off the trees with a raw edge, rifle gripped in readiness, its weight a steady anchor in my trembling hands. The chatter resumed, circling the campsite like a predator testing its prey, and a warning shot split the night, its muzzle flash illuminating the void with a brief, blinding glare before silence returned, heavy and accusing. Fresh prints, deeper and more defined, emerged in the soft ground, their clarity a testament to deliberate intent, the claw marks sharper, the heel narrower, and I stood vigil through the night, Kilo unresponsive, his stillness a silent rebuke, the forest's quiet a mocking taunt that pressed against my sanity. By the third night, I fortified the campsite with noisemakers crafted from metal gear, pots and pans tied with twine, and obstacles of fallen branches arranged in a jagged perimeter, a soldier's defense against an unseen foe, each placement a calculated move to buy time. Through my night vision scope, small, humanoid shapes materialized, their movements coordinated with an eerie synchronicity, vanishing under the flashlight's glare like phantoms, their tactics a calculated assault on my psyche, probing weaknesses with a patience that unnerved me. The evidence. Prints etched with precision, rustling that mimicked intent, strategic evasion that spoke of learning, pointed to an intelligence that transcended wildlife, a predator studying its prey with a cold, calculating eye. The fourth night descended with a laughter that clawed at the air, high-pitched and childlike yet steeped in a malice that curdled my blood, accompanied by red eyes glowing like embers from the dark, their light a beacon of dread amid the shadows. Shots rang out, the rifles recoil a familiar jolt, missing as the entities vanished with a speed that defied tracking. Their harassment relentless until dawn left me hollowed, my energy sapped, my hands trembling with exhaustion. Packing to depart, I discovered a missing arrow, its absence a breach of my defenses, a violation that struck at the core of my control, and Kilo's behavior shifted, jerky, mechanical, his eyes vacant pools of nothingness, his growl a discordant chorus of voices that chilled my blood with its otherworldly timbre. Realizing he was lost to me, a truth that tore at my heart, I abandoned him. The howl that followed a distorted echo of his voice, evolving into near-human speech as I fled, each note a dagger in my resolve. Reaching my truck, the silence felt ominous, a promise of pursuit etched into the morning air, a weight that clung to me as I drove away. 3 days later, guilt propelled me back with Dave, only to find Kilo's mutilated body at the campsite center, his organs arranged in a ritualistic circle with a surgeon's care, my arrows forming a star. A chilling testament to an intelligence that had studied my every move, the clean cuts and precise placement evidence of a predator far beyond the natural order, its purpose a mystery that haunted my every step. This tale, rooted in the Colorado wild, weaves evidence, prints, tracks, behavior, with a horror that defies explanation. Are you brave enough to delve into these shadowed forests? Or does the thought of unseen watchers chill your resolve? Consider your answer as you journey with me into the unknown.